Major Elena Stark pressed her palm against the jagged wound in her side, grimacing as fresh pain coursed through her body. The emergency lighting cast eerie blue shadows across the wreckage of what had once been Outpost Horizon's control center. Bodies, some human, most alien, lay scattered among twisted metal and shattered equipment. "Status report," she demanded, her voice steady despite the blood seeping between her fingers. The station's backup computer responded with artificial calm. Hull breaches on multiple levels, life support failing in numerous sectors, estimated survival time limited. Elena coughed, tasting copper. Casualties. Majority of crew unaccounted for or confirmed deceased. Medical facilities non-operational. She pushed herself upright, ignoring the stabbing pain. Survivors. Several life signs detected in scattered locations. Warning: veteran boarding party detected in maintenance tunnel echo. So they weren't satisfied with just bombarding the station, she muttered. They wanted to make sure nothing remained. The veteran collective had finally discovered Outpost Horizon, the Joint Alliance Human Intelligence Facility that had been collecting evidence of their systematic purging of genetically inferior species on the border worlds. Elena had been assigned as military liaison to the station's alien crew just months ago. Now she was likely the highest-ranking survivor. Computer, activate emergency beacon. Authorization Stark Protocol Alpha. Warning: emergency beacon will reveal our location to remaining veteran forces. It'll also bring help, Elena muttered, stumbling toward a weapons locker. And they already know where we are. She needed to gather the survivors before the veterans found them. Each moment that passed meant more blood lost, but she couldn't worry about that now. The evidence they'd gathered on veteran atrocities was too important. Countless lives depended on getting it to the Alliance Council. Computer, give me the quickest route to the nearest survivors. Chief Medical Officer Zexnar found his sensory appendages quivering with tension as the Alliance rescue vessel Healer's Touch emerged from faster-than-light travel near the coordinates of the distress beacon. The view screen showed the devastation immediately. The once proud research station was now a mangled husk-venting atmosphere and debris into the void. Preliminary scans indicate multiple life signs, announced the ship's Lumidian captain, her translucent skin pulsing with concern. Most are faint. Zex clicked his mouthparts, a gesture of determination. My team is ready, Captain. Proceed with caution, the captain warned. We're not detecting veteran signatures, but that doesn't mean they've gone. As the ship maneuvered toward the crippled station, Zex reviewed what he knew of the various species likely to be among the survivors. The station's records listed numerous different sentient species, most of which he had treated before in his long career as a physician. Humans, however, remained something of a mystery to him. Their recent entry into the galactic community meant that detailed medical data was still being compiled. He'd studied the basics, of course. Endoskeletal mammals with iron-based oxygen transport systems, surprisingly resilient for their classification. But study was one thing, practical experience was another. Docking complete, announced the ship's computer. Warning: environmental hazards detected. Adaptive suits recommended. Zex and his medical team, 2 multi-limbed nurses, a diagnostic specialist, and a surgical expert, donned their protective gear and moved toward the airlock. Each carried specialized equipment designed to stabilize patients of various physiologies for transport. Remember, Zex instructed, priority is stabilization. We move fast, assess quickly, and get them back to the ship. The station could lose structural integrity at any moment. The airlock cycled, revealing the nightmare within. Emergency lighting flickered, casting everything in an unsettling blue glow. The air was thin, acrid with the smell of burnt circuitry, and something more organic, the unmistakable scent of interspecies blood and tissue. Life signs concentrated in maintenance area, reported one of the nurses, checking her scanner. This way. They moved quickly through debris-strewn corridors, occasionally passing a body beyond help. Zex forced himself to remain clinical, detached. There would be time for mourning later. Now his focus needed to be on those who could still be saved. When they reached the maintenance area, they found several survivors huddled together, many grievously wounded. A makeshift barricade had been constructed from storage containers and damaged equipment. Behind it, a lone figure stood guard, tall for a human, Zex noted, with short dark hair matted with dried blood. Alliance Medical Corps, Zex announced, raising his appendages to show he wasn't a threat. We're here to help. The human lowered her weapon, relief briefly flashing across her features before being replaced by stern professionalism. Major Elena Stark, Station Military Liaison. You took your time. We came as soon as we received your signal, Zex replied, already moving to examine the wounded. What happened here? Veteran assault, Stark answered, wincing slightly as she shifted position. They hit us without warning. Targeted strikes to communications, weapons, and life support. As his team began triaging the wounded, Zex noticed something alarming about the human officer. Her uniform was torn in multiple places, revealing what appeared to be severe lacerations and puncture wounds, yet she remained standing, apparently functional despite injuries that should have incapacitated most species. Major, you're injured, he stated, moving closer with his diagnostic scanner. She waved him off. Take care of them first. I've stopped the bleeding. Zex wanted to argue but recognized the command tone in her voice. Besides, she was right. Many of the others were in critical condition. An engineer with severe radiation burns, several crew members suffering from decompression trauma, a navigator with compound fractures of all primary limbs. Over the next while, they stabilized the most critical patients and transferred them to the rescue ship. Throughout it all, Major Stark assisted, carrying those who couldn't walk, applying pressure to wounds, and offering reassurance in various languages. Only when the last survivor had been evacuated did she finally allow herself to slump against a bulkhead, her face pale beneath smears of grime and blood. Now it's your turn, Major, Zex said firmly, approaching with his scanner. She didn't argue this time, which concerned him more than her visible injuries. The diagnostic readings that appeared before him made his appendages stiffen in alarm. You have multiple penetrating traumas to your thoracic cavity, significant blood loss, and the beginning stages of circulatory shock, he reported. How are you still conscious, let alone ambulatory? Stark managed a weak smile. Stubbornness. This goes beyond stubbornness, Zex replied, calling for a stretcher. You need immediate treatment. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, he noticed a dark, gelatinous material around her wounds. For a moment, he thought it might be some kind of emergency sealant from a medkit, but his scanner identified it as something else entirely. Is that your blood? He asked, mouth parts clicking rapidly in confusion. What's left of it? She confirmed, her voice growing fainter. Probably why I'm feeling lightheaded. Took long enough. Before Zex could ask further questions, her eyes rolled back, and she lost consciousness. His concern spiking, he directed his team to move quickly back to the ship. The medical bay of the Healer's Touch was overwhelmed. Every treatment pod was occupied, and makeshift beds lined the walls. The air buzzed with the sound of medical equipment and the varied respiratory patterns of a dozen species. Zex moved efficiently between patients, directing his team while focusing on the most critical cases himself. Major Stark had been stabilized and placed in a treatment pod configured for human physiology, but something about her condition continued to baffle him. When he finally had a moment to review her medical data in detail, he noticed anomalies that contradicted his training. He called over his diagnostic colleague, whose species specialized in comparative xenobiology. Look at this circulatory analysis, Zex said, displaying the results. The cellular components are behaving in ways I've never observed. The specialist studied the data, the patches of light-sensitive skin on their face changing color as they processed the information. Fascinating. The cells contain microscopic fragments that appear to be deliberately aggregating around the wound sites. Exactly, Zex confirmed. Initially, I thought it might be some kind of artificial medical technology, but the scanner confirms it's a natural process. He transferred his attention to a magnified view of one of Stark's wounds. Watch what happens when I introduce a standard coagulation inhibitor. They observed as the medication was administered through the pod's delivery system. Instead of preventing clotting as it would in most species with fluid-based circulatory systems, it caused minimal disruption before the human's blood continued its process. Their blood fights our medicine, the specialist remarked, their skin now pulsing with bright colors of excitement. It's as though their circulatory fluid contains its own medical response system. I need to adjust our approach, Zex decided. Instead of working against this process, perhaps we should complement it. He was reconfiguring the treatment protocols when an alert sounded from Stark's pod. Her eyes had opened, and she was attempting to sit up despite the restraining field. Zex hurried over, deactivating the field. Major, please remain still. Your injuries are severe. How long was I out? She demanded, her voice hoarse. A significant time, he answered. Your condition is stabilized, but still serious. She grimaced. The data from the core. Did anyone recover it? I believe the captain sent a team to retrieve critical materials, but I'm not certain. You need to find out, she interrupted, attempting to rise again. The evidence we collected on the Vekerans. It's the whole reason they attacked us. Zex gently but firmly pressed her back down. I'll inquire immediately, but you must rest. Your body has unusual healing capabilities, but they aren't magical. This caught her attention. What do you mean, unusual? Your blood, he explained, indicating the monitor displaying her vital signs and microscopic imagery. It contains components that actively work to seal injuries. I've never seen anything like it in any species. For a moment, she stared at him blankly, then understanding dawned. You mean clotting? That's just how human blood works. Just how it? Zex's mouthparts clicked rapidly in astonishment. You mean all humans possess this capability? It's not a specialized adaptation or medical enhancement. No, it's completely standard, she replied, seemingly genuinely surprised by his reaction. Our blood contains platelets and clotting factors that activate when exposed to air or damaged tissue. It's basic human physiology. Zex felt his scientific curiosity overtaking his immediate medical concerns. Fascinating. In most species I've treated, bleeding continues until pressure is applied or medical intervention occurs. The idea that your circulatory fluid automatically seals itself. Is this really the time for a biology lesson? Stark asked, though her tone had softened with amusement despite her pain. Before Zex could respond, the medical bay doors slid open, and the ship's captain entered. Doctor, Major, she acknowledged. I'm afraid we have a situation. Long-range sensors have detected several Vekeran vessels on an intercept course. They'll reach us within hours. Stark's expression hardened. They're after the evidence. Did your team recover the data? Yes, and we've begun transmitting its contents to Alliance headquarters, but the signal is being jammed intermittently. The captain looked grim. We can't outrun them with all the extra mass from the survivors and equipment we salvage. So we fight, Stark stated. This is a medical vessel, Major, the captain reminded her. We have minimal defensive capabilities. Zex watched as the human's face set in determination, a biological reaction he recognized across species, the steeling of oneself before a difficult task. Then we need to be smarter than them, she said. Help me up, Doctor. We need to plan. Against his better judgment, Zex complied. Some battles couldn't be postponed for proper healing. Overseer Darek of the Vekeran Collective stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Purity, watching as the Alliance medical vessel grew larger on the view screen. His scales rippled with anticipation, membrane-like frills expanding at his neck and wrists, an involuntary display of Vekeran aggression. They are hailing us, Overseer reported his communications officer. Ignore it, Darek ordered. Prepare boarding parties. I want the data core destroyed and all witnesses eliminated. His second-in-command, a battle-scarred veteran, approached with uncharacteristic hesitation. Sir, attacking a medical vessel violates even our own military codes. Darek turned slowly, his vertical pupils narrowing to thin slits. Are you questioning my orders, Sub-Overseer Merrick? No, sir, Merrick replied quickly. I merely suggest we consider the political ramifications. The Alliance will. The Alliance will do nothing if there's no evidence, Darek interrupted, and there will be no evidence once we're finished. The purification program continues. He returned his attention to the view screen. Target their engines and weapon systems. I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. Yet, as his gunners complied, Darek considered what he knew about the vessel. A standard medical class, lightly armed, but with advanced shield technology to protect its patients. Not designed for combat, but potentially challenging to board due to its compartmentalized security systems, a feature designed to contain outbreaks of contagious diseases. The first volley struck the Alliance ship's shields, which flared bright green against the void of space. Their shields are at partial strength, reported the tactical officer. They're returning fire. Darek hissed in surprise as the medical vessel launched a series of precision strikes. Several hit their mark, causing his ship to shudder. Damage report. Minor damage to forward weapon arrays, came the response. They're targeting our offensive systems specifically. Interesting strategy for a non-combat vessel, Darek thought. Perhaps there was more to this rescue ship than anticipated. Continue the assault, he ordered. I want those shields down. The exchange continued for several minutes, with both ships maneuvering and firing. The Alliance vessel was surprisingly agile for its class, avoiding many of the veteran attacks while landing precision hits of its own. Sir, the tactical officer called. Sensors detect their venting plasma from their port section. Shield strength dropping rapidly in that area. Darek flared his neck frills in triumph. Target that weakness. Prepare the boarding parties. As his ships concentrated fire on the weakened section, the Alliance vessel seemed to lose control, listing to one side as its shields failed along the port quarter. We have them, Darek declared. Bring us alongside and deploy the boarding teams. I'll lead them myself. They've taken the bait, Stark announced from her makeshift command position in the medical bay. The captain had granted her tactical authority, recognizing the human's combat experience. Zex looked up from treating a patient with respiratory distress. The plasma venting worked perfectly, she confirmed, studying the tactical display they'd set up. They're moving the flagship into position for boarding. The other vessels are hanging back to prevent our escape. The ship shuddered as another hit struck their deliberately weakened shields. I still don't understand why you wanted them to board us, Zex said, securing his patient before moving to Stark's side. Wouldn't it be better to keep them at a distance? In a conventional battle, yes, she agreed. But we can't win that fight. This way, we control the battlefield, which means we have a chance, small as it may be. She tapped the display, highlighting sections of the ship. We've evacuated all personnel from these areas and reconfigured life support to make them inhospitable to veteran physiology. They'll be forced to take these specific routes through the ship. She traced a path with her finger, which we've prepared accordingly. Zex marveled at how quickly she'd adapted to their situation, developing a complex defense strategy despite her injuries. The stimulants he'd administered were clearly helping her remain functional, but even so, her resilience was remarkable. The captain mentioned you have combat experience, he noted, but this level of tactical planning seems beyond standard military training. Stark gave him a grim smile. I specialized in asymmetric warfare before being assigned as a military liaison. When you're outnumbered and outgunned, you learn to use every advantage. Before he could question her further, the ship's internal sensors alerted them to a hull breach. They're aboard, Stark announced, rising from her seat with a barely concealed wince. Time to move to Phase 2. She turned to Zex. I need you to get back to the primary medical bay and secure it. If anything happens to me, You're the backup plan. What exactly is Phase 2? He asked, suddenly concerned by her tone. She checked the sidearm the captain had provided her. I'm going to introduce those monsters to human diplomacy. Zex's appendages twitched anxiously. You're going after them directly. In your condition. No, she corrected. I'm going to let them capture me. But first, I need one more thing from you. She explained her request quickly, and Zex's mouthparts clicked in alarm. That's far too dangerous. The stimulant I already gave you is pushing the limits of what your body can handle. Then make sure whatever you give me next works with it, she said firmly. This isn't a request, Doctor. It's our best chance. Against his better judgment, Zex prepared the compound she wanted. This will temporarily enhance your strength and reflexes, but the strain on your cardiovascular system will be severe. When it wears off, I'll crash hard, she finished for him. I know. Just make sure it doesn't wear off too soon. He administered the injection, watching as her pupils dilated slightly and her breathing quickened. It will take a short time to reach full effectiveness. After that, you have perhaps a brief period before the side effects begin. She nodded. That's enough time. She placed a hand on his chitinous shoulder, a surprisingly comforting gesture despite their physiological differences. Get to the medical bay. Keep our people safe. As she turned to leave, Zex found himself saying, Be careful, Major. She glanced back, a hint of a smile on her face. Careful isn't going to win this fight, Doctor, but I appreciate the sentiment. Overseer Derek moved through the Alliance vessel with practiced efficiency, his boarding party securing each section before advancing. So far, they'd encountered minimal resistance, a few security personnel who were quickly neutralized, and some automated defense systems that posed little challenge. It was almost too easy. Sir, one of his soldiers reported, sensors indicate most of the crew has retreated to the central sections of the ship. As expected, Derek replied, They're protecting their patients and the data core. Continue forward, but remain alert. They advanced through another corridor, this one leading toward what ship schematics identified as a secondary command center. As they approached a junction, Derek noticed something unusual, a smear of red liquid on the floor leading away from their current path. Blood, he noted, but not from any species I recognize. Scan it. A soldier ran a portable analyzer over the substance. It's registering as iron-based, likely human. Derek felt his frills expand with interest. Intelligence had indicated at least one human was assigned to Outpost Horizon, a military liaison. If they'd survived and been evacuated. Change of plans, he decided. Squad 2, continue to the command center. Squad 1, with me. They followed the blood trail, which appeared intermittently through several corridors, eventually leading to an auxiliary storage area. The door was partially open, and from within came the sound of labored breathing. Derek signaled his soldiers to take position, then approached cautiously. Through the gap, he could see a figure slumped against a storage container, a human female in a borrowed Alliance uniform, one hand pressed against her side, where fresh blood seeped between her fingers. She looked up as the door slid fully open, her expression shifting from pain to resignation as Vekaran soldiers surrounded her, weapons aimed. Derek felt a surge of satisfaction. This human had likely helped gather the evidence against his people. Her capture was an unexpected bonus. You are a long way from home, human, he observed, studying her with interest. He'd encountered few humans since their species joined the galactic community, and in rather poor condition. She gave a weak laugh that ended in a grimace. You can thank your bombardment for that. Quite the welcome committee for a research station. A research station gathering intelligence on Vekaran activities. Derek corrected. Did you really think we wouldn't find you eventually? Honestly, I was hoping you would. Her eyes met his, showing none of the fear he expected from a wounded prey species. It saves us the trouble of hunting you down. Derek hissed, his frills fully extending in anger. Bold words from someone bleeding out in a storage room. You're right, she shifted, wincing. Not my best tactical decision, getting cornered like this, but I thought you might want this before I die. She slowly reached into her pocket and withdrew a small data crystal. Insurance policy, my personal copy of everything we found on your genetic purification programs. Derek's eyes fixed on the crystal. It could be a trick, but if genuine, it represented a loose end he couldn't afford to leave. He gestured to one of his soldiers. Take it. As the soldier approached, Stark suddenly seemed to sway, her hand loosening around the crystal. The Veteran bent to retrieve it, and in that instant, everything changed. With speed that belied her injuries, Stark surged upward, one arm locking around the soldier's neck while her other hand seized his weapon. Before the others could react, she had disabled him and fired 3 precise shots, dropping an equal number of veterans. Impressive for someone so gravely wounded, he called out, signaling his remaining soldiers to flank her position. But futile. You think these wounds slow me down? She replied, her voice stronger now, almost taunting. This is nothing. Humans live our entire lives in pain. We're born in it, molded by it. Darek signaled his troops to advance, and they converged on her position from multiple angles. There was a brief, intense exchange of fire, then silence. Cautiously, Darek emerged from cover to find his remaining soldiers standing over the human. She lay on her back, her weapon kicked away, fresh blood spreading beneath her from multiple new wounds. Restrain her, he ordered, approaching to look down at his captive. I have questions before she dies. Stark gazed up at him, her breathing labored but her eyes still defiant. So do I. Like how many worlds have you sterilized in the name of genetic purity? How many species have you deemed unworthy of existence? Darek crouched beside her as his soldiers secured her wrists with restraints. You misunderstand our purpose, human. We don't eliminate species out of hatred or fear. We do it to preserve the natural order. The strong survive, the weak perish. It is the fundamental law of evolution. Spare me the manifesto, she spat. I've seen the recordings of your cleansings. There's nothing natural about them. Perhaps not, he conceded, but neither is the Alliance's approach. Preserving species that would naturally have gone extinct, allowing inferior genetic lines to continue and contaminate the galactic gene pool. His frills extended slightly in a gesture of disgust. It's an abomination against nature itself. To his surprise, the human laughed, a harsh, pained sound. You talk about nature while commanding a battleship. The irony would be amusing if you weren't such a monster. Darek studied her with renewed interest. Despite multiple wounds and significant blood loss, she remained not only conscious but defiant. Most species would have succumbed to shock by now. You humans are remarkably resilient, he observed. Your file mentions you evolved on a high-gravity, high-radiation planet with extreme temperature variations and abundant predators. A death world, I believe is the term. Earth has its challenges, she acknowledged, but they made us what we are. Yes, Darek agreed, and what you are is fascinating. Perhaps before we destroy this vessel, I should have our scientists examine you more thoroughly. Your species' adaptations could prove useful to our own evolution. Her eyes narrowed. I thought mixing genes was an abomination against nature. Selective incorporation of superior traits is different from random contamination, he replied. Now about that data crystal. You mean this worthless piece of tech? She opened her previously clenched fist to reveal the crystal, now crushed to fragments. Oops. Darek snarled in frustration. It doesn't matter. Once we've taken control of this ship, we'll destroy every copy of your so-called evidence. That's the problem with you totalitarian types, Stark said, her voice growing stronger despite her injuries. You think information can be controlled like everything else. Before Darek could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. His communication device activated, the voice of his second-in-command urgent. Overseer, we've been locked out of the ship's systems. Some kind of security protocol is activated. The atmosphere in numerous sections is being vented. Derek realized with growing fury that he'd been played. She was a distraction, he hissed, rising to his feet. Secure the bridge and the main computer core immediately. He turned back to Stark, who was now smiling despite the blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. What have you done? Given you a choice, she replied. Your boarding parties are cut off from each other by emergency bulkheads and atmospheric controls. You can either try to regain control of the ship, which you won't, or retreat while you still can. Derek raised his weapon, aiming it at her head. Or I could simply kill you and everyone else aboard. You could try, she agreed, but while you've been chasing me, the evidence has already been transmitted to multiple Alliance outposts. Killing us won't stop what's coming. For a moment, Derek was tempted to pull the trigger anyway, to eliminate this infuriating human and salvage what he could of the situation. But tactical reality asserted itself. If what she said was true, his priority needed to be escape and damage control. He lowered his weapon. This isn't over. The collective won't fall because of one data leak. No, she agreed, but it's a start. Derek turned to his soldiers. Bring her. She's our ticket out of here. What followed was chaos. Despite her injuries, Stark moved with preternatural quickness, her attacks precise and devastatingly effective. Derek barely had time to defend himself before she was on him. The stolen weapon pressed against his throat. How? He gasped, feeling the pressure against his scales. That's classified, she replied, her voice now strained with effort. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to order your forces to withdraw, and you're going to return to Vekarin space. If you don't, the evidence doesn't just go to the Alliance. It goes to every independent system in the sector. You're bluffing, Derek hissed. Stark increased the pressure on his throat. Am I? Want to bet your entire purification program on it. For several moments, Derek considered his options. Then, with a hiss of defeat, he activated his communicator. All forces, return to our vessels. Disengage immediately. Wise decision, Stark said. Now walk. She kept the weapon pressed against him as they moved through the corridor toward the nearest airlock where his boarding shuttle had docked. As they walked, Derek noticed her movements becoming less fluid, her breathing more labored. Whatever had given her that burst of strength was fading. You won't make it, he observed. Whatever chemical enhancement you're using is killing you almost as quickly as your wounds. Probably, she admitted, but I'll last long enough to see you leave. When they reached the airlock, she kept the weapon trained on him as the remaining Vekarin soldiers boarded the shuttle. This isn't victory, Derek told her as he prepared to follow his troops. It's merely a postponement of the inevitable. The collective will continue its work. Maybe, Stark acknowledged, but now the galaxy knows what you're doing. That's enough for today. As the airlock closed between them, separating predator from prey, Derek saw the human finally slump against the wall, the weapon lowering as her strength ebbed. Their eyes met one final time through the reinforced viewport. Zex found Major Stark unconscious by the airlock, surrounded by the aftermath of combat. Scans showed her condition was critical. The combination of her injuries and the stimulants had pushed her body to its limits. Working quickly, he stabilized her enough for transport back to the medical bay, where he and his team fought for hours to keep her alive. The stimulant compound he'd provided had interacted with her unique physiology in ways he hadn't fully anticipated, causing a cascade of cardiovascular complications. Days later, when she finally regained consciousness, Zex was at her bedside, reviewing data on a tablet. Did it work? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Zex looked up, his appendages twitching with what she'd come to recognize as his version of a smile. The evidence reached the Alliance Council. They've opened a formal investigation into the Vekarin Collective's activities. She nodded weakly. And Derek? His vessels retreated to Vekarin space as ordered, Zex confirmed, though I doubt we've seen the last of him. No, she agreed. People like that don't give up easily. She attempted to shift position and winced. How bad is it? Zex set down his tablet. You nearly died multiple times. Your circulatory system was severely compromised. But you fixed me, she noted. I adapted, he corrected. Once I understood how your blood's clotting mechanism worked, I was able to work with it rather than against it. It's quite remarkable, actually. She managed a small smile. You sound impressed. Scientifically fascinated, he admitted. Your body's ability to repair itself is unlike anything I've encountered before. I've already begun developing new treatment protocols based on what I've learned. He hesitated, mouthparts clicking softly, which she now recognized as his equivalent of a thoughtful frown. Though I must ask, those stimulants should have been fatal given your injuries. How did you manage to not only survive but overpower a Vekaran commander and his troops? Stark glanced toward the door to ensure they were alone. Let's just say humans have more adaptations than are in your medical database. Our bodies produce emergency chemicals under extreme stress. Adrenaline, endorphins, a cocktail of survival compounds. Your stimulant just enhanced what was already there. Fascinating, Zex murmured. Your species evolved with internal combat drugs. Evolution's a hell of a designer, she replied with a weak laugh. When your planet wants to kill you every day, you adapt or die. Zex made a note on his tablet. The Alliance Council has taken an interest in your actions, as has my own government. They're considering establishing a cross-species medical research initiative focused on adaptive physiology. And they want us to run it, she guessed, noting his barely contained excitement. They've asked me to lead the medical division, he confirmed, and they want you as the security advisor and human liaison. Apparently, showing Vekarans that humans are not to be trifled with has diplomatic value. Diplomatic value, she repeated with a snort. Is that what we're calling it now? The captain tells me you'll receive a formal commendation once you're well enough to stand, Zex continued. The first human to receive the Alliance Star of Valor. I was just doing my job, she said, suddenly uncomfortable with the recognition. That's not how the survivors see it, Zex countered. To them, you're the Deathworlder who bled to save them. The medical bay doors slid open, revealing the ship's captain and several other officers, along with some of the recovered survivors from Outpost Horizon. Stark tried to sit up straighter, wincing at the effort. Ah, Major, the captain said with a smile. We just wanted to check on your recovery. While the visitors gathered around her bed, Zex discreetly adjusted her medication. She caught his eye and gave him a small nod of gratitude. Their shared ordeal had forged an unlikely connection, the insectoid doctor and the human warrior. Weeks later, Zex stood before a packed auditorium at the Alliance Medical Academy. The audience contained physicians and researchers from dozens of species, all gathered to hear about the groundbreaking new research initiative. The concept of evolutionary convergence is not new, he explained, gesturing to the holographic display behind him. But recent events have shown us just how much we still have to learn from one another's adaptive strategies. On the screen, a magnified image of human blood cells appeared alongside. Similar images from 6 other species. When I first encountered human blood clotting, I was frankly horrified, he admitted, drawing chuckles from the audience. Their circulatory fluid contains microscopic fragments specifically designed to clump together and seal wounds, a biological mechanism that seems almost engineered for warfare. He clicked to the next slide as Major Stark entered from a side door. She had recovered remarkably well, though Zex's keen medical eye could still detect the slight stiffness in her movements. But what appeared alien and frightening at first glance revealed itself to be a sophisticated evolutionary solution to a universal problem, he continued. One that has now inspired numerous new emergency treatment protocols for species previously thought incompatible with rapid hemostasis techniques. Stark took her position beside him, her uniform crisp and decorated with both Earth and Alliance commendations. Major Stark has agreed to assist with a demonstration, Zex announced. With her permission, we'll examine how human physiology responds to minor trauma and how these responses can inform our understanding of. A young researcher in the front row raised an appendage, interrupting the presentation. Dr. Nar, are all human biological functions this aggressive? Stark and Zex exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Then she smiled, the same wry smile she'd given him when they first met in the wreckage of Outpost Horizon. Well, she said, addressing the student directly, wait until you hear about how we digest food. The audience's mixture of horrified gasps and fascinated murmurs confirmed what Zex had come to understand. The galaxy wasn't ready for humans, but it desperately needed them. As the presentation continued, his thoughts turned briefly to Overseer Derek. Somewhere out in Vekaran space, the commander had been right about one thing: this wasn't over. But thanks to the unlikely alliance formed in Crisis, the alliance now had something it had previously lacked: a species that understood how to fight back. And if the Vekarans or any other threat returned, they would learn what Zex now knew. Humans didn't just survive on a death world. They conquered it.